welcome back or welcome for the first time. My name is Jason Neiman. I'm going to be your host today, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the fourth installment of our webinar series, and this one is Residents Live at Friendship Park. We've got a really exciting and what will prove to be a very informative webinar today. We've got some amazing people that we're going to have on talking today. A couple of quick things that I would just like to let everybody know. We've got a couple of polls that will be up today that we'd love to get your feedback on. So if you could respond to those, we would appreciate it. Secondly, and we'll say this again at the end, but I want to say it now as well, being that this is our last one in this particular series, we are going to be doing some other webinar series in the future. So keep in touch with us through the website, through social media on Facebook, and obviously through email. And we will obviously keep the emails coming from Leslie to make sure that you have a good point of contact there as well. We've got some amazing people on today with us. We've got our marketing director, Jean LaRoe. Hi, Jean. Good to see you.
Hello.
We've got Leslie Lang. Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
You guys, most people are probably already familiar with Leslie. And then we've got Alice and Bill. Hi, Alice. Hi, Bill.
Hello.
And we've also got Jere and Bonnie with us as well.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you all. And first of all, I wanted to thank you for joining us today and giving us some of your time. I know you're all very busy, and so taking the time to sit with us today and help out some of these people that are on the webinar, having a consideration of what's going on at Gibbons Estates and at Friendship Park in particular. We appreciate the time you're spending. So what I'd love to do is, for those of you that haven't been on a webinar with us in the past, I'd love for Jean to just do a quick background on Friendship Park, and just to kind of give the people on, again, a little bit of a background. One other side note, and I'm sorry, Jean, I forgot to ask this.
Okay.
There is a Q&A button down at the bottom of your window if you're on the webinar. If you do have a question, feel free to send your question in on the Q&A window. If we have time to address it, or if it fits in with the current line of questioning, we will definitely do that. If we don't get to address it during the webinar, we will absolutely follow up with you after the webinar and make sure that your question has been answered. So feel free to shoot those questions in, and we will do our best to fit them in during the webinar, but if not, we'll follow up. Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Jean, and off we go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. I wanted to do a quick review for those of you who have not been on any of our prior webinars in this series, just so that you have kind of the basics about Friendship Park at Gibbons Estates. This is a little map of part of our campus, and lots of people have asked, well, where is Friendship Park? Is it a different community, or is it on the Gibbons Estates campus? And so just wanted to be really clear with you all that Friendship Park is a community within Gibbons Estates. And right here in the center part of the campus, we have about 4.5 acres of property that we are developing for some new apartment homes. We went through some pretty significant focus groups and market studies and things like that to come up with a plan that would be successful and be a nice addition to our campus. So what we came up with was a plan for 2 additional buildings with a total of 80 apartments. And the apartments range in size from about 900 square feet up to about 1,350. Of course, all over our campus, we have smaller residences and larger residences. And we felt like this kind of mid-sized residence was something that we needed a little bit more of on our campus. So that's why we focused on that size. All the apartments are either a 1-bedroom den, a 2-bedroom, or a 2-bedroom den. So there's actually 13 different floor plans. They all have 2 full baths, and they all have either a balcony or a patio, and some of the patios actually are walkout patios, which is great. This is a picture of what it's going to look like when it's finished. Kind of a bird's eye view of the two buildings. They are going to be actually connected as well by a covered walkway and bridge, and then also connected back to the main part of the campus through Asbury Commons. So residents from Friendship Park will be able to actually walk all the way from their apartment down to dining and wellness and all of the activity rooms without an umbrella, which we thought would be really beneficial given the wet weather that we sometimes have here at Gibbons Estates in Asheville. So we're very excited about these buildings, and I wanted to also give you one other little view. This is kind of a street view rendering of what it's going to look like. This is a picture of the second building, the phase 2 building. This building is the one that has 45 apartments in it, and we are actively pursuing and finding new residents for this building. It's filling up fast. The webinar series has been wildly successful, and we've made some great headway in finding new residents for this building. So we're super excited about that. And I guess the last thing I wanted to share with you is the timeline, which is really important. These buildings are going to be finished and ready for occupancy in the fall of 2021. One building will come a little sooner than the other, about a 3-month spread between the two. But what's beautiful about new construction is that you know pretty close to when it's going to be time for you to move. So it's a lot easier to make your plans than if you were to just be on the wait list and waiting for that cottage that you really have your heart set on. It might take a year, it might take 5 years. You never know when you're on the wait list. But with new construction like this, we can really do a much better job of planning your move. And we've got people on our team here in the marketing office to help you do that. So that's what I've got to share right now. I'm sure there'll be some questions I'll be happy to field later.
Thank you, Jean. Appreciate it. Okay, I'd like to introduce next Bill and Alice and Jere and Bonnie. Bill and Alice are actually current residents at Gibbons Estates, and they do not live in Friendship Park as it's not completely built yet. And then Jere and Bonnie have already made a commitment to live at Friendship Park. So we've got people that already live at Gibbons Estates and can give some really good background on what it's like to live there. And then we've got some people who have made the commitment to live at Friendship Park once it's complete. So we've got a nice little spread there for you. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to ask both couples a question here, and then Bill and Alice, I'll get into some more specifics with you about living at Gibbons. But I'd love for you to just take a minute or two and give a quick background about yourselves. Bill and Alice, if you wouldn't mind starting, just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your family, your careers, a little background.
Thank you. Let's see. I am a retired Presbyterian clergy person, and we have 3 children and their spouses and 8 grandchildren, 7 boys and 1 little girl.
Wow.
I'm also retired clergy, but I spent part of my time in Africa as a mission worker, and particularly focused on humanitarian assistance in conflict areas and doing peacemaking between tribal groups. So we particularly wanted to be in a place where we could get really involved in the local community. And so that's what we've done.
And Bill and Alice, where did you move from initially? Where did you come from before you moved to Gibbons Estates?
We moved from the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia.
Great, okay. And Jere and Bonnie, I'd like to welcome you today as well. And would you give us the same background on yourselves?
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was born and raised in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Went to college and medical school just outside of Philadelphia, and then did my residency in pediatrics at Johns Hopkins, where I met my lovely wife, who was, of all things, a pediatric nurse. When we finished the residency, we had to go into I had to go into the Navy for a short period of time for a couple of years, and we were stationed in Cuba for 2 years at the Naval Hospital there. Returned to Pennsylvania for full-time practice, and we both lived there until we retired. And Bonnie can tell you what about her. So.
Right. Well, I was a nurse when I met Jere, and then went back and got a master's in healthcare administration. So my professional career was in being a hospital administrator. And then recently, over the past 10 years, have really turned to art. So have done ceramics and stained glass, which I'm actively involved in the arts right now. We do have 2 children, one in Arizona and one in Cape Cod. But I'm unhappy to say we only have 1 grandchild, so I wish we had more.
Well, the good news is you can either go to Cape Cod or the Southwest to go vacation whenever you need to, right? You have places to stay in both. So not too bad to be able to go to those 2 different places.
And we forgot to mention, we live in Waynesville at this time, which is about 35 miles away from Asheville and Gibbons.
Great. Okay. Great background. Okay. So Bill and Alice, we're going to kick it off with you. I've got a few questions that I'd love to pose to you. So tell us how long you've lived at Gibbons first. Give us that background.
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And so you haven't been there a really long time, but you've been there long enough to get your hooks in and make sure that you're a part of the culture and the community, obviously, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and part of our process was that we came a year before we actually moved in, because we were experiencing construction of Creekside, just like Bonnie and Jere are experiencing the construction of Friendship Park. And so we didn't know when our house would sell, and when it sold, we had a gap of time and rented an apartment less than a mile away for 11 months. And we became a part of this community actually close to 4 years ago. And then it was a simple move over 1 mile when we moved in 3 years ago.
Wow. Great. So what was the decision-making process like? What did you consider when you decided that Gibbons was the right choice?
We, should I answer this? Yes, I started. We really worked on this for 2 or 3 years before we made a final decision. And both of us were semi-retired and doing a lot of different things. But then when that came to a close, then we knew that that it might be time to make some decisions. And we did not know anything really about continuing care communities. And so we started to look in the Virginia area and then here in the Asheville area as well. But by this time, we had narrowed down to some very important things with both of us of what we were looking for and what a move would mean for us.
Yeah, we were actually teaching seminars on pre-retirement, and one of our assignments was to teach about options for housing, and we actually didn't know anything about CCRCs, and that put us on a journey of visiting various ones, sort of testing them out, thinking we were just gathering data to teach. And in the process, we realized, hey, we need to think about this for us. And
Wow.
started us on the path. We also looked at geography. Our preference was mountains versus flatland or sea. We were interested in the sort of atmosphere and climate. Washington, D.C. area is hot and humid in the summer and sometimes gets too much snow and cold in the winter. And we found that Asheville was 5 degrees warmer in the winter and 5 degrees cooler in the summer. And that sounded perfect to us. And we liked the outdoors part of it. We also were interested in a size city that would have a lot of opportunities for us, but not be so big that it would be a struggle to get engaged and involved. And we found that Asheville was really the right size for us. And I think one other thing in terms of Gibbons, we liked the size of Gibbons Estates, that it was large enough that there were plenty of people here because we thought we were starting early enough that we still had good number of years to build community of relationships. And we wanted to be able to do that. And this was the size, and the options of different types of housing was really important to us.
Right. And obviously at Gibbons, there's a multitude of options there for you to choose from, which is great. What are some of the things that you can share with us that surprised you about Gibbons Estates when you first moved in?
I think one of the things that did surprise us was the amazing amount of people who were very, very friendly and who wanted to be friends. And we had lived in a 55 plus neighborhood in the Northern Virginia area. And we had friends there, but nothing like here. And so that whole year we lived in an apartment, we met people, but then but moving in, I think both of us have been surprised by the number of what we would say now are close friends that we are beginning. Well, we have 3 years worth of history building with them, and that has just been a wonderful, delightful surprise.
That's great. And tell me some of the things that you're involved with at Gibbons, but then also out in the Asheville community as well, because I know you guys are big on philanthropy and helping and giving back. So what are some of the things that you're involved with at the community, and then as Asheville, the community at whole?
One of the things that has helped us is we got this image that for us right now at this stage of our life, that Gibbons would be like a platform or a base from which we could operate, and that a great deal of our energy and activity would be outside the Gibbons Estates community. And so there are so many different programming opportunities here as a part of our community, but actually we don't participate in a number of them because we know that that's coming in the future when the radius of our activity gets a little bit less. We do use the wellness center, or you might think of it as a gym, for regular 3 times a week workouts. And that's on a hiatus right now because of COVID-19. So we're doing daily walks here with the trails and all the space that is available for that to keep up our exercise. But in the community, we're involved in what's called 12 Baskets Free Cafe, which is food for homeless and low resource people. And in that first year, we started talking with management here at Gibbons and said, look, you've got leftover food in the dining. What are you doing with it? And it's just being recycled. Here's an opportunity to be involved in the community. And so management worked with us, dining worked with us. And now for the last 3 years, about every Friday, we drive down to dining, pick up all of the leftover food that's been kept for us, and we take it to 12 Baskets Free Cafe. So that's one of our activities. Then I'm very involved with criminal justice reform here in Buncombe County. We've got major grants available, and so I'm part of the community engagement work there. And then we're very involved in our church as well.
Wow, you are continuing the mission well beyond your careers for sure.
Yes, one of the things I did when we first came, I've always wanted to explore if there was a potter who lived inside of me. And so I signed up for a 6-week, very beginning pottery class, and it was a great experience. And the thing I found out is I do not have a potter that lives inside of me. So I'm very, I love to see all the artistic work that is done here, and know that I gave the pottery class a try. And then another interest of mine is silence and contemplative prayer. And every Monday, at least before the virus hit, there was a group that met for that experience together, which I was involved with. And then I've also been involved in, before the virus came as well, working with a women's correctional facility in Swannanoa, which isn't very far here. It's in the east.
Wow. Again, your mission continues without question. Tell us a little bit about a typical day. So obviously you're both independent in your interests, and sometimes I'm sure you get together as a couple to do things, but what's a typical day look like at Gibbons Estates for you?
We start at different times. Somewhere between 6:30 and 7, I'm out walking. And that's when I get my early morning exercise. Alice does her walking after I've returned a little bit later. One of the entertaining things for me is there's such wonderful natural space here that we have lots of wild rabbits. And part of my job is to count the rabbits every morning. And so this morning I counted 19 rabbits on my mile-and-a-half walk. So that's part of it. Then it's a little different right now than it used to be.
Sure.
Because we're more isolated. We do a good number of Zoom meetings for our different groups that we're involved in that can't meet face to face. I do experience Zoom fatigue at times, as others do. But one of the things we do in our building, this Creekside building has 12 apartments in it. And so because I'm kind of the Zoom specialist, we have set up a happy hour every Friday afternoon that is a Zoom happy hour, and everybody in all of our building gather together for an hour for us to share what's happening in our lives, sometimes get reports of what's going on in the broader community at Gibbons, but also in the city of Asheville and the county of Buncombe. And so we keep up with each other that way. So that's a fairly common kind of experience. And today has started at 7:30 in the morning with my first Zoom meeting with some men that I meet with a couple of times a month. And the evening will end with a dozen people that we're involved with from our church community that we meet with a couple of times a month.
And what about you, Alice? What changes for you?
Well, again, as Bill was very kind, just to say I walk a little later. Sometimes it's much later than he walks, but it seems to work for us. And that has been since the virus, because before, again, we used the wellness center quite regularly. And so that's been a part of it. And I think, again, this is pre-COVID and right, we're in it now, but we look forward to the day when we are back to what would be a normalcy or a new normal, is that we used frequently, many times, the dinner hour to meet new people, to be with old friends, old new friends that we had met, to share a meal together. So that was very much a part of our day before the virus, and we look forward to that happening again. I don't do as much Zooming as Bill does, but I do enough to keep me connected. But like today, I have lunch with a group of women that we are able to social distance, and everybody brings their own lunch and their own drink, and then we just share our lives with each other for a couple of hours. So I did that today.
Well, how important, and I'll just make this, it's an obvious point, but how important for you to be able to stay connected with people within the community, but do it on a different level. But so important in that social aspect of, being retired, quote unquote retired, and then being able to continue those relationships even under difficult circumstances. It's a real opportunity. Let me ask you, how has your decision to move to a senior living community, life plan community, how has that impacted your family and their future? I always like to ask that question. I usually get a similar answer, but I'm just curious. I'd love to hear your answer on that.
I'll start out and then Bill can add to it. I think one of the wonderful positive things that we had when we began to look at different areas that we were not, as I would use the word, geographically bound. We have these 3 children and nieces and nephews and grandchildren, but no one is our lives have been so spread out in different places to live. So we didn't have one single area that we really wanted to be in so that we would be closer to family, because we're not close to any family here, but we keep in touch with them very easily through social media and visiting and travel. And so our family was really very, very pleased that we were making this decision. I'll let Bill tell you a little bit about why.
Yeah, I think for our children, they knew that they might face some real struggles or crises in their own extended families and in-law families. And, you know, different people approach retirement communities in different ways. And some are determined to stay where they are. And for some, it's a crisis waiting to happen. And our children knew that we were not going to be a crisis waiting to happen, that we were taking the initiative early. We were making our move. Both of us have some underlying health issues that someday we'll probably will have to deal with, moving from a chronic to a different kind of phase. And our children know that we're in a place where all of that can be addressed. And in the meantime, we're building our new community of relationships. And they are really proud of us. My son has said a number of times, we're watching how y'all are doing this because we want to do it that way too. So that's
wow,
pretty,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Great. That's a great response. Thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that. The last question I want to ask you before we move on to Bonnie and Jere is, how has Gibbons Estates exceeded your expectations at this point?
Hmm.
And I guess I'm making an assumption that it has, but if it hasn't, let us know. But I would assume that it has.
I think the word relationships, we've already spoken to that, but I think that has far exceeded our expectation. I think we expected that when we came, but that has just far exceeded the new friends and these wonderful, rich relationships. And then also, not only with the people who are residents like we are, but relationships with our staff as well. The wait staff and the dining and the cleaning, and the 2 people that you're looking at right now, Leslie and Jean, have become really wonderful friends to us. So we didn't know that would happen. So these new friendships and good neighbors. And I think now what is very relevant is during this COVID period, we are so incredibly impressed with the management here, and John Cowan, who's the CEO. I'm not sure we've ever felt as safe and as cared for as we do here right now.
yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me in terms of the exceeding expectations, is we ask a number of questions related to management and relationships between management and staff, and management staff and residents, because that was important from our perspective in how organizations develop and how they perform with quality over a long period of time. My PhD was in intercultural organizational behavior and development. So those are the kind of things that I wonder about. But you never know until you face a major crisis as to just how. Can you turn that off?
Sorry, I don't know how to turn it off. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
It'll stop.
That's part of the Zoom culture. You're good.
It is.
That's right. And I'm the technology advisor in our family.
I said, I don't know how to turn it off.
Nice.
But in terms of management, when you face the crisis, that's when you find out whether it's just verbalized or whether it's real. And what we're experiencing here, and we talk with neighbors all the time about it, and I think our attitude is very similar to what the residents feel. This is a management that has looked this pandemic in the face and said, what do we need to do to keep our staff safe and our residents safe? And even if it's an uncomfortable kind of role. And so protecting this community, you cannot guarantee that a virus is not going to get inside the gates. That is not a guarantee you can make. What you can guarantee is that we're going to do our best to test people, to have basic guidelines that everyone must follow, whether they're staff or management or residents, and to communicate honestly and openly. John Cowan, as the executive director, has communicated with us every week by letter. And every time from the beginning, he said, if and when we have our first case, you will know it immediately. That's a huge relief to know that they're not going to be hidden things here. And so this kind of approach has made us feel really safe. And when there are congregate facilities in Buncombe County who have had many cases and a good number of deaths, that has not happened here. And so we're thankful for that. And we hope and believe that that will continue on as long as we're facing the reality of this pandemic.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Jere and Bonnie, I'm going to turn to you, the stars of the show, if you will, about moving into Friendship Park. And I'm just going to kick us off with a quick question. And that is, first and foremost, how did you hear about Friendship Park and Gibbons Estates? And I'd love to hear the background on that.
Yes.
Well, we had put our names in at Gibbons well before Friendship Park, I guess, was on the drawing boards. We didn't know anything about it when we put our names in. And we knew there was a long list to get in. We didn't know how long. We didn't care. We weren't really ready anyway to move. I guess maybe you never think you want to be ready, but when this came up, when Friendship Park came up, we saw the information about it. And so we attended some of the sessions at Gibbons, and we thought, well, this looks nice. If we were able to get our names on the list and get accepted, we would have a better plan of when our move would occur. Very difficult. We have accumulated so much stuff, like everybody does. I'm thinking, well, what if they call us next week and say, well, there's a place open? What do I do with all my stuff? Well, with Friendship Park, it helps a little bit more on the timing. We definitely wanted to stay in the Western North Carolina area. We've made some good friends here in Waynesville, and we hope to maintain contact and social equivalence with them. We have our healthcare providers here mostly in Asheville, and we wanted to remain close to that. We knew we were never going to go to Flagstaff, Arizona, or Cape Cod to live near our kids, just as Bill and Alice have done. So it just made sense, and we liked what we heard. We liked the setting, the artist's rendering looks very, very nice, and so forth. So that's sort of where we were.
And I would add that Jere and I, we've lived on a farm. Right now we live on 6 acres. We've always lived where we've had green space around us. And so we felt that on our visit to Gibbons, that first visit there was like, wow, there's a lot of trees, there are hiking trails. And I think in this new Friendship Park, actually where we are, we have one of those patio walkouts, and we're going to walk right out into that park, with a stream and trees. So that was also a big positive for us in looking, and also liking the construction very much of Friendship Park, the way it's laid out, the way I do a lot of work in arts and crafts style, and so does my husband. And it just, the whole architectural rendering appealed to us. And so that was another decision that it made it easier. Yeah.
Nice. Is there anything else about your particular residence that you're excited about? Anything in your home that you're looking forward to?
Well, the walkout is good, like I said. And also we felt that we wouldn't have to go up and down in the elevator because we were on the first floor. So
Right.
that appealed to us.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you had the opportunity, or you're going to have the opportunity, to pick some of your finishes and decide what your residence is going to look like, correct?
Yeah, yes, very much so. I mean, we could choose our own floor plan and when we made our selections, our choices, and now we have to, of course, make the decisions about what, maybe upgrades we want, this, that, and the other thing. But that's nice to have some decisions as opposed to just have to, well, here's the apartment that's open and accept that as it
Right.
is. Yeah, that's very appealing to us.
And I would say too, there were decisions like right now, the first decision we had to make actually was a choice of a kitchen layout. So, did we want a gallery? Did we want L shape? So these are some opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have if you moved into something that was already there. So we found that to be good also.
That's great. And how is your planning coming along and organizing your stuff, as you put it so clearly? How is that planning coming along?
Very slowly. I have a dedicated workshop with quite a bit of equipment, and I have accumulated many tools over the years. Because I worked with a craftsman after I retired, and I've accumulated all this stuff, and I don't know what to do with it. So it's going slowly, but it's going. Little by little, we throw things out or take them to Goodwill.
And I have the same problem because I also have a studio for ceramics and glass. So we are starting to downsize that. In fact, I'm selling my kiln next week. Yes. So. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You said earlier when talking about your background that you both have a career in healthcare, and I think that's something that is always in the back of people's minds. Can you talk about the value and the importance of that as part of your decision-making process in moving to Friendship Park?
You take that.
Well, I don't know that it had much to do with our decision to move to a residence like Gibbons, as much as the fact that we didn't want to down the road be a burden on our children. Things happened. Both of our parents lived in communities like this, and it was beneficial for them. They both of our parents lived to be quite aged. My father was in his mid-90s when he passed. My mother was 100. Her parents were both
90s.
in their mid-90s. So I think that probably had us more thinking than our medical backgrounds, but also realizing that, we're going to need help somewhere along the line medically. But maybe you have some different thoughts, dear?
No, I think that was a big part of our decision making, was seeing and just knowing that with our parents, that there was care there for them, and we didn't live close to our parents. And because Jerry and I don't live close to our children, we do have to think about what is that future going to be like, because everybody's a plane ride away, at least. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And also,
So
we like to make independent decisions from our children. So we wanted to make our own decision versus our children making decisions for us.
Oftentimes when I'm interviewing people that live at communities, they have two things to say. One is, I wish I would have done it a bit sooner. And then the second thing they say is, it was the greatest gift I could have given to my kids. You know, just knowing that they don't have the burden of having to take on the decision-making process at that point, or financially responsible or anything like that. So I think that's a resounding call from all of the seniors that we've spoken to.
I think
Sounds like
another
similar
thing
for
that
you.
we didn't mention yet, that for us, we've been married 54 years, and
Wow.
to make this last move together is of utmost importance to us, not to wait till something might happen to one of us and then go, but we want to do this together. So that was important also.
Great. So what are you looking most forward to once you move into Friendship Park? What's one of your big things that you're just saying, you know, it's going to be really great when we get there?
You take it.
I saw that. You both were like, you answer,
Okay.
you answer.
All right, I have to say, number one, I heard Bill and Alice talk about the hiking. Well, here in Waynesville, we have Lake Junaluska, which we walk religiously. So we are very pleased that right there at Gibbons, we're going to walk out our patio door and we're going to be able to keep up that walking in a natural setting, which to me provides a lot of peace and a lot of thinking time. And so I think we're looking forward to that. And I think Jerry has something that he liked when he took his visit there that you might want to share.
Well, yes, I was very, very impressed with their woodworking facility. I was never able to actually get inside, but I peeked through the windows on 2 occasions, and the space is nice, the equipment looks good, and I'm looking forward to meeting someone who's connected with the woodworking studio, and to find out and to discuss with them, you know, what things maybe do I bring along or don't bring along. But also I'm thinking about it now. One of the things that I guess I'm looking forward to it is, Monty, you mentioned we have about 6 acres. We're on the side of a hill. We have, it's very heavily wooded. We've got grass to mow. I have stuff to weed whack, gutters to clean out, and all that kind of stuff that goes along with taking care of a home, which I like to do myself, but I do myself. Maybe I don't like to do it. So I won't have to do that at Gibbons. I can let somebody else do all those things. So I won't have to mow my yard and weed whack the weeds and so forth and so on.
And I think that's become important because we prided ourselves on being able to do all these things, and we're finding that these things are getting more difficult. That I find I can't do 6 hours of gardening anymore. That's, you know, it just doesn't happen. So that is another thing. But again, you know, I know there is a place there that has a greenhouse, and there are some other opportunities for doing plants and gardening type activities. So I'm looking forward to that too. And also, I did see that pottery place, Alice, where you went. And there is a potter in me, even though it's been the past 6 years glass, but that potter still lives there. So I did see those facilities. So looking, you know, to be involved in some art classes and maybe share some of my expertise with others too for art projects. Yeah.
Well, Alice, it sounds like you have somebody who can step right in and make you a better potter right out of the gate. How nice is that? How nice is that?
Potter's still there. Who knows?
That's right.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask Jere and Bonnie one more question I'd love to get before we get into some of the questions that came through on the Q&A. What has your experience been like working with Leslie and the marketing team and Jean throughout this process? Obviously, sometimes when you're making a decision like this, things like that can be daunting. So what's it been like working with them? And Leslie, if you need to go on mute or unmute yourself, feel free. But I'd just love to get your feedback on the experience of working with the marketing team.
Well, I have to share it's been very good. And I also must share that I met Leslie via her pastime of being a wonderful actress and a singer. So we became friends during that relationship here in Waynesville. But I have found the staff, at this time, mainly have been dealing with marketing and sales. We don't have the experience that Bill and Alice do. but we found that people answer our questions. We've had good communication. The webinars certainly have been very informative. And when we started the process, we very much enjoyed meeting other potential residents, and do look forward to being able to see more people in person. Like, it's really great just to see Bill and Alice here, because we right now, of course, are not going on to the campus. So
Right.
do you have anything to add to that, Jim?
No, I think yeah, the connection with Leslie and Janine and so forth has been very good. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Let me ask you both a kind of a final question for your moments here, and I'll move it back to Bill and Alice. Obviously, the people that are on this webinar and on previous ones, and these are all being recorded, so they'll be on the website. What is the messaging that you would give people, or what would you say to people that are trying to make a decision or considering? What would you say to them, knowing what you know now?
Well, I think I would suggest, first of all, visit several different types of retirement communities. And right now it might have to be done virtually, but it's good to make comparisons and decide what really fits for you. One of the things that happened for us is we did some analysis on the financial side of it, and there is a model that where you pay more at the beginning, and if you need assisted living or healthcare, the cost doesn't go up. So in a sense, you're buying your insurance on the front end. And the model that we have here at Gibbons is a pay-as-you-go if you need the assisted living or other type of healthcare. And our option was to go with this. This was our preference, and it also helped us narrow the options out there. Since we've gotten here, Gibbons has actually upgraded the amount of support for independent living, so that there's staffing, nursing aides, whatever you might need, for as little as a half hour of time, that you can actually purchase to help yourself stay independent, maybe for the rest of your life. And that's a huge thing that we thought. So knowing your own finances, knowing your own health situations, and what you need for yourself. And then I think knowing what your goals are at this time of life, and what your limitations and needs are, so that you're matching that up. And then we've talked about and advised many people, get on the waiting list for at least a couple of places, because you never lose your place on the waiting list. And sometimes you suddenly escalate your decision process and need to go quicker. But if you haven't gotten on the waiting list, you really could be caught in a bind, and it seems to be an unnecessary bind.
Great. What about you, Bonnie and Jere? Any thoughts on that?
Well, go ahead.
I would almost totally echo what Bill said. We did look at about 5 different places in this area and got on the waiting list at 2. Knew we'd never get into 1 anyway, but Gibbons was still our first choice. And we made those same choices. And I think it is so important for people to look at the options that are available in the area you're going to be in, and see what fits best for your goals and finances, of course. That's very important.
Great. Okay. So Leslie, I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you, if that's okay. I'll give you an opportunity to unmute yourself. A couple of questions came through. What's winter like in Asheville? Somebody from Florida.
Okay, so it is the mountains, but some people get the wrong impression of our mountains. We're in this plateau. So we do experience all 4 seasons, and they're all very mild, which is very big drawing factor for the Asheville area for people to come here. People that are coming from northern states, I tell you, leave your snow plow at home. We might get 1 to 2 little snow situations that's usually gone by noon. But we get here, it's beautiful on our campus when we do see snow. I wish that we'd get a little bit more, but you'll usually see a little bit of white in the winter, but it's not a place where you're going to be locked up for days at all. I think somebody had mentioned, should I bring my wool sweater? Well, wool sweaters are just great to have anyway, but it's not like a parka where it's a survival thing to be able to get through winter. So
Right.
that would be optional for you on that, but all 4 seasons, very mild.
Yeah. And what about, obviously we've got 2 couples on that we're talking to today, but, for people that have either lost a spouse or have been single, what's it like living at Gibbons as a single person?
Statistically, we are finding that about 60 to 62% of the people are couples when they're moving in. And, people live here on an average of 13 years. So some people may arrive as a couple and they may not always be a couple at the end. So you're going to see a lot of changes on whether or not it's heavily weighted with single or couple. Regardless, and I'd love for Bill and Alice to chime in a little bit with this as well, but because I don't live here and I'm going to say, oh, you're going to do great. You're going to have all kinds of social activities as a single or a couple. But I think that Bill and Alice might be able to give a more genuine, realistic response on that I could. There's the buddies, there's the cluster groups, there's the newsletters, there's activities. There's so many things on our campus to keep people communicated and active. But Bill, Alice, what would you want to add to that?
Yeah, I won't go into all the details because it's down rabbit trails, but I was single all my adult life until my mid-60s, and this is a whole other story. And then I married Bill, and I was close friends with his family and his wife who passed away, and we've been married for almost 10 years. So there is something inside of me that has a real understanding from experience and love for single women. I just think single women are amazing and wonderful. And I'm very glad to be married to Bill. I wouldn't want that to change at all right now anyway. Maybe tomorrow, but no, not. But in our building, we have a whole handful of single women. And what we noticed from the very beginning is that they found one another. And sometimes I see them together and I'm almost just a little bit envious of the freedom they have, because I remember those days. But I think here that single people, and I'm just speaking of single women now, will find their place and they'll find many, many friends, both married and single women. What would you say, Bill?
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Bill, be very, very careful right now.
That's right.
Be very careful.
Right. Yeah, we're going to keep sharing this apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we have 5 single women in our building, and it is very common to see them when we were at the dining was open, to see them eating a meal together, maybe all of them together. To see a couple of them on walks, regular walks for exercise together. Those who have their pets, taking their dogs out, and if their dogs get along with each other, that works out well. And I think there's the option. Some people really are mostly comfortable with themselves and are happy to be an introvert and don't need a lot of social relationships. And there is a freedom for that kind of time as well, to be a choice. But there's also the opportunity to build relationships and to live in those community relationships over years.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Let's talk about, there's been a couple of questions about, and I'll quote, how's the food? I've been to Gibbons on many occasions and had the opportunity to have the food, so I know the answer to this, but maybe Bill and Alice, you can speak to that, or Leslie, feel free.
Well, as an employee, I just had lunch. I had a seafood sandwich that was amazing.
They're good.
It was really good. So I had that today. But and of course, there's so many new dining venues that are being done right now. So it's great and a lot of options, but now there's going to be even more. I'm so excited about the social brew. I love the idea of having a market to be able to go down and buy things. Because some days you have time for a quick lunch or maybe for a long social dinner with wine. So you have the full service dining room as well. But Bill, Alice, I'll let you chime in and share a little.
Well, you know, the old saying is when someone goes off to college, what is it that they gain 10 pounds? We both have experienced that here. And we think the food is wonderful, and we're looking forward to what you have said, Leslie, about the new opportunities. And there are our favorites when we see that on the menu, because we know every day for 2 weeks what's going to be served. And there are favorites, and then there are some things that we would just choose not. But that was always going to be the case with food. But what we find the food delightful and weight producing.
Yeah, we also have, I think one thing that's been important to me is we have a food allowance, which gives us incredible flexibility of how we use it. There are some places, not Gibbons, that requires you to eat a meal every day, or you lose it. We have an allowance that can be rolled over for 2 full months of time, and so you can build up a nice amount. And you can choose when you eat and when you don't. There's also a grab and go, or now they're beginning to call it Gibbons to go, which basically provides everything from a full meal for 2 to a half dozen eggs, or whatever it might be, and that you can buy those, and that all goes toward your allowance. So it's not extra money out of your pocket. And then, of course, we do a little bit of shopping in the grocery, but during the COVID-19 time, the program staff actually are willing to go do our grocery shopping for us. And we can put 12, 15 things on a list each Monday, and it will show up right at our door. And that's to protect us from being out in places where we could get the virus. And so we do everything from cooking out on our balcony with not gas grill, but with an electric grill that works extremely well, to cooking full meals, to just getting a sandwich from the dining that we then split between us. So the flexibility is terrific, as well as the taste.
Great. Well, we're sort of wrapped up on time here. If there were any questions that were asked specifically and we didn't get to them, I apologize. We will, Leslie, I know you will follow up with people after this if they had questions that didn't get answered. I'd like to just say both of you couples are incredibly charming, and we're very lucky to have both of you on the call today, and we really appreciate the time you've spent. And I'm going to speak for the attendees of this webinar because I know I can. The time that you've spent and the passion that you've put into your answers and the amount of time that you've spent really is going to pay dividends for a lot of people on this call who are really trying to look at what the next steps are for them as well. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of them. I'd also like to thank our unsung hero here, Kim Button, who has been helping manage all of our webinars as well. Thank you for being there. Jean, as we said at the beginning, we are going to be doing some webinars in the future. Please stay connected with us on social media. Please, if you have any questions or you need to get any answers from, and I know you're going to pull up Leslie's information here, from Leslie Lang, you can always reach out to her. Her phone number's there. When you get your email after this, make sure that you make a note of that as well. We will be doing some, like I said, webinars in the future. We'll keep everybody up to date on social media and on the website. And I think I will turn this over to Jean. Thank you, Jean, for letting us help you host these webinars. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to doing the ones in the future as well.
And thank you, Kim. And Kim, do you have a final poll to pop up? I'm going to give her a little reminder. We have one last question to ask all of you who have participated with us. It just makes it easier for us to figure out who to call first. So if you would like to talk to Leslie about your options at Gibbons Estates or Friendship Park or any and all of the above, please click yes on this poll so that we can get in touch with you right away. And again, I think Jason mentioned, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got things that, ways to reach out to you. Please look for more emails from us. Sometimes they come under my name, sometimes they come under Jessica West's name, sometimes they're under Leslie's name. But we will send you emails every once in a while with a little invitation to participate in our next, whatever we cook up. We'll figure it out, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed this. We feel like we've learned something big here on how to do webinars. And if you have any feedback for us on that, we'd love to hear from you as well. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jean. We hope everybody stays healthy and safe, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you to our guests for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Gotta go. Should I shut